Good afternoon. My name is Despina Tomadaki, and I'm a senior loan officer at the European Investment Bank. I would like to thank the organizers of the Delphi Economic Forum for giving us the opportunity to have a discussion today on impact investing and the creative economy. We will discuss the financing of cultural and creative entrepreneurs, what might enable it, and what are the required business and entrepreneurial skills. So we have the honor of having here with us today a panel of very distinguished speakers. Mr. Jacco Minnaar, Chair of the Management Board at the Triodos Investment Management, Ms. Francesca Sanderson, the Director of Arts Programs and Investments at Nesta Foundation, and Mr. David Parrish, Management Consultant and Coach on Creative Industries. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today. It is indeed a great honor. Let me start with Mr. Minnaar. Jacco, welcome. I would like to start by asking you, what is the mission of Triodos, and what are the main sectors that you invest in?
Thank you, Despina, first of all, for having me. So I represent Triodos Bank. Triodos Bank is a bank that started in the Netherlands, but is now in 5 European countries, both with a bank and an asset manager. We are a bank and an asset manager like any other, that we are in terms of that we are regulated by the financial authorities in the different countries. But at the same time, we're quite different, because from the day we started in 1980, now more than 40 years ago, we've always had the objective to make people more conscious with their money. People would know that their money is yielding a financial return, but they would be less conscious of the fact that banks and asset managers actually decide what happens in society and what doesn't, and that sometimes bad things were financed with their money, and maybe not all was managed for positive impact. And the latter is really what we stand for. So every euro we have in deposit from depositors and in our investment funds, we try to convert into loans and investments that have a positive impact on society. And we focus specifically on the energy and climate transition, on the food transition, and also on social inclusion. And also for Triodos, climate is a very important topic, but I'm very happy to be here because in order to have a well-functioning and fair society, the social side is equally important, and so are the creative industries and culture.
So the question is, why culture? Where does the focus on culture come from?
So Triodos has actually been involved in financing the cultural sector for some decades now. And we do so because of, on the one hand, the impact on society that culture can have. Culture is about connecting ideas, about reflecting on what happens in society, and it often is a stimulus for new things that get started and for positive change. And at the same time, it's also something that enables individuals to develop. So from a personal development point of view. And we invest and finance the cultural sector in multiple ways. For example, we have and are financing and investing in museums, theaters, stages, but also the instruments of individual artists themselves, and numerous other examples.
This is very interesting, thank you. But being a banker myself, I have a question about the bankability of the cultural sector. How do you define it?
Yeah, I understand your question, Despina, because I guess many people looking at it outside in would say, well, the cultural sector doesn't seem like a sector that is very bankable. Our experience is actually different. I think it starts with understanding the sector. The sector often has a large component of subsidies, but there is also a lot of commercial income in the sector from tickets, for example, or from adjacent businesses like shops, restaurants. So entrepreneurship nowadays is more important in the cultural sector, especially since after the financial crisis, across the board, we've seen subsidies being cut. And we also have seen that the culture sector that has a lot of ability to adapt, has been adapting. So if you understand those different sources of funding and can really analyze the cash flows well, then it is bankable. And we have actually found over the last decades that our losses to the cultural loans have been very low. I mean, in the range of 50 basis points. So very much in line with some of the other sectors that are quite safe and bankable.
This is quite impressive, I should say, and very enlightening. Thank you, Jacco. So I would like to pass to Ms. Sanderson. Francesca, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today. You are the Director of Arts Program and Investments at Nesta. Nesta is a foundation in the UK with a mission to contribute towards the growth of the creative economy. Could you please share with us the main activities of Nesta and who are your key stakeholders?
Thank you. It's a real honour to be here, especially in such esteemed company. And it's very reassuring to hear from Jacco about the credit of the culture sector for reasons I'm about to explain. Nesta is an innovation foundation based in the UK. We used to be a non-departmental public body, and then we're established as an independent innovation foundation in 2012. And we've always had a lot of work present in the creative economy. So we try to support organizations and innovation throughout the ecosystem. So right from research and problem definition to incubation of solutions to scaling of solutions. And we've done a lot of research in the creative industries, thinking about the intersection of culture and the creative industries and the economic benefits, how new funding models could be perpetuated. And in 2013, 2014 or so, Nesta, and I wasn't here at that stage, started talking to other stakeholders. So Esme Fairbairn, a big foundation in the UK who were pioneers in the area of social impact investment. Arts Council England, which is the big UK public funder of the arts, so the provider of almost all of the public subsidy, although historically there would be more local public subsidy for the arts as well. And everyone was coming to it from a different angle. So the Arts Council were thinking, well, we're giving out all this money and grant funding. Sometimes we are funding, for example, something that's revenue generating, a car park, a shop, a show that's going to have high ticket sales. How can we reimagine our funding so that some of that can be recycled? Esme Fairbairn were trying to make loans into the arts and finding that they didn't get the deal flow. So the arts organisations weren't thinking about repayable finance at that time. And I should differentiate, these were unsecured loans. So this isn't mortgage lending, and we certainly will have higher losses than 50 basis points, but it sits somewhere on the risk spectrum between grant capital and secured lending. We're often a co-investor with our colleagues at Triodos in Bristol, and the work we do is highly complementary. And we've built, so we started the Arts Impact Fund with Esme Fairbairn, Arts Council England, Nesta and Bank of America, who got involved because the Cabinet Office in the UK were trying to broker partnerships and structured funds between public, private and philanthropic funders. And of course, Bank of America are a big corporate arts funder and have been for a while. We fully invested that fund, the Arts Impact Fund, in about 2018. We then launched another fund, making smaller loans. So that was up to 150,000. This is all to organisations which are in the cultural and creative sector and which can demonstrate a positive social impact. So again, we're very impact focused. We launched a third fund last year, the £23 million Arts and Culture Impact Fund, and we now have a team of 9 operating a business called Arts and Culture Finance, which sits under the Nesta umbrella. but we have recently had a strategy review at Nesta, and now this is sort of legacy work, but we are hoping to build on the platform that we've established. We've also historically done innovation funding and grant funding, and trying to enable experimentation and understanding how we can impact. And I think in not to answer one of Jacco's questions, the bankability of the sector, with the high intensity lending we do, so relationship based with the organisations that do, and system shifting, the mindset change to try and encourage entrepreneurial spirit and in a sector that has traditionally been funded by subsidy.
Oh, I must say that the work that you do at Nesta is quite impressive indeed. So I understand that Nesta has been a catalyst that has helped arts and cultural organizations to thrive. What are the key policies that have been implemented in the UK and have enabled the growth of the creative industries? And what has been the role of Nesta in their formulation?
I'll take care of this. This is my colleagues in the Research and Policy Department. There's some significant policy changes around in the last around creative clusters, establishing partnership areas to try and remove the of away from London and into more regional. That was based a bit on some research work about how creative SMEs will go around each other. There was also recent in the Industrial Challenge Fund, Courses of the Future, which we worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company. It was an education programme to reimagine this is the future might be. So really looking into some of those new business models enabled by digital, and they can go access to and improve accessibility of, which I think different the arts in general and the creative sector, as well as promoting the flow between artists and creatives, business, impacts of health and education, trying to stimulate new work. And I think that those creative clusters really well.
Thank you. Just one more question. It is without doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has had major impact on the creative industry, the creative economy. What do you think is the outlook for the creative economy in the post-COVID-19 era, and what are the key challenges that need to be addressed?
Well, the vital question now, I think, globally, there's been a real underinvestment. It has been particularly decimated by the collapse of the visitor economy, and I think that some of the stuff about arts and cultural organisations have just been taking tentative steps to build earned income. We found that actually, sustainability organisation, that it almost felt unfair that when the pandemic hit, organisations trying to become more resilient were actually more vulnerable to external such as the pandemic, which we did not. I think that there's a huge opportunity, an amazing amount of experimentation that's gone on in organisations that have tried to read it and use digital tools to think that very demonstrative of the imaginative power that we have in the sector. I want that where organisations and artists are emerging from a very, very difficult time, that risk tolerance will be, organisations are going to be risk averse, they're going to be wanting business. I worry that there's not the development capital available because of the I think that implementing has a huge part to play in this. I'll get onto that, because I think we need to experimentation, risk take, rebuild the confidence in organisations, but with impact mindset. So always thinking about what the broader social consequences of doing, and I think impact investment is title to do that as well. Huge and massive momentum and impact invested amount of capital has swollen huge of that is coming to the creative economy. So we've launched a platform called Creativity, Culture, which we're trying to showcase the amazing that can come through creative enterprise globally, and that's from informal creative economies, huge, which in women, Indigenous, and people of colour are very much overrepresented. So it's really an important sector for those areas of society. And there isn't. So we're trying to showcase the opportunity artistic and creative enterprise to make, and also secondarily the innovative work already funding them. So we have two sections in the report: one called Creativity, one called Connecting Impact Capital. Around that platform, we're trying to really build a movement, so understand the potential for impact investing in the creative economy, and also create a community of best practice. So it came about because I was trying to build this business in the year. I was speaking to people who were doing this in Argentina, and I thought, well, why with these same problems across the globe, why don't we put that together so we can create a set of how to do these? I don't want to move into David's time. I could say more, but I would love to hear from our panelists.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you. That was very interesting. Now, over to Mr. Parrish. David, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us today. David, Jacco mentioned the word cash flows. Francesca mentioned the word partnership. Does it sound very Greek to the people that you work with? Do you find that creative and cultural organizations are investment ready?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me this afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and the other panelists. As you know, I work right across the creative industries, and that covers everything from tech startups to small enterprises, right into the arts and cultural sector. So it's very hard to generalize, I think. And again, I'm working with chief executives and board members in organizations that might be involved in fashion design or theatre or dance or architecture. So, the whole spectrum of the creative industries is so very wide. In terms of investment readiness, well, at one end of the spectrum, you have tech startups, and they, from the word go, are thinking about investment, particularly equity investment. So they are ready for it. They design their whole business model around that kind of investment. Then you have the small creative enterprises. And I'm thinking of people who start up sort of web design businesses or public relations businesses or small video businesses. And generally, they just get on with it, and they don't really think of investment until much later, when they might be looking for loan investment or perhaps equity investment. But they haven't really designed their business with that in mind, and they have to therefore do some serious adjustment. And then we come to the, what you might call arts organizations or the sort of subsidized cultural sector. And they are a different mindset yet again. They might have been used to grant funding and have organized their activities around getting grants. But when it comes to loan funding, they're not quite ready. It's a slightly different way of thinking. And then, of course, equity investment is different again and might be quite alien to a lot of arts organizations. In fact, it might not even be possible depending on their corporate structure. Companies limited by guarantee without share capital, which has been the favored format for a lot of arts organizations, don't have, share capital. They can't get equity investment. So I think it's a very mixed picture. It's very hard to generalize, but I would say that, broadly, if you demand a yes or no answer from me, then I think that many organizations in the arts and cultural sector are not really fully ready for investment just yet. They have to go through a thinking period. They have to change their mindset and their business models in order to be ready for investment.
So the question would then be, what can be done to educate those people and familiarize themselves with business and investment issues?
Well, that's, right up my street. That's exactly what I do. My mission really is to help creative people to be smarter with business. They often come from their passion and their talent and creativity around the particular type of creativity, whether that's dance or theatre or music or publishing or design. And they have to get their heads around a lot of the business issues. And that's different for everybody. But generally speaking, they're not always comfortable or qualified initially in business matters. So that's very much what I do, to help creative people to be smarter with business. And I do that through my coaching and my business advice. I do that through my books and publications and lectures and speeches and workshops. So a couple of examples that come to mind are, I was involved in a project in Eastern Europe, the EU Eastern Culture and Creativity Partnership, which involved the British Council and the Goethe Foundation, and was particularly focused on cultural managers in post-Soviet societies in Eastern Europe. So we're talking there about Azerbaijan, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, etc. And we designed a series of workshops, particularly for cultural managers, to help them to become more familiar with business issues generally, with creative entrepreneurship, and also with investment issues. And as a result of that, we did live workshops, but we also have still online some free video-based courses. And I did a couple on strategic planning and marketing. And they're available for, cultural managers in any country right now. So, and they're free to access. And then another project I was involved in the city of Liverpool, in my home country of England in the UK. And this was called Fit for the Future. And it was designed to help arts organisations in Liverpool to be less dependent on grant funding. And it was actually instigated by the City Council of Liverpool, which was already giving a lot of grants to these institutions, from orchestras to community arts organisations, dance, music, theatre organisations, etc. But they knew, the City Council knew that public funding was about to be cut. So they instigated a programme, and I was the lead consultant on it, to help these arts organisations to become more entrepreneurial, to raise income from additional funding streams, to work together on back office issues, and to look towards investment. In other words, to change their mindset from seeing themselves as arts organisations that needed subsidy and funding to enterprises that could generate income and could go into partnership with funders and understand the agendas of investors. So there are a couple of examples of particular projects, but generally all of my work really is helping creative and cultural organisations to become smarter with business.
Both examples were indeed very interesting, and thank you for sharing them with us. I just have one final question for you, David. You've worked with arts and cultural organizations during the COVID-19 pandemic. How successful have these organizations been in adapting, diversifying, and creating new business models during the pandemic?
Well, again, it's a mixed picture, I think. And when we talk about the creative industries, we talk about a huge range of different business models and sizes and different emphasis, or different types of creativity. But I know that I remember at the beginning I was speaking to one entrepreneur who does computer games, and he said he was embarrassed because he has a lot of friends working in theatre and other aspects of the creative industries who were suffering really badly, but he was actually making even more money. he was waking up in the morning to more money in his bank accounts because there were more downloads of computer games and apps, which kind of suited the lockdown in a way. So I think it's a mixed picture. I think the digital end of the creative industries have done very well. Anybody who's helping businesses to get online with websites, social media, film, advertising, they're doing really well. I think it's clear to everybody that in the cultural sector, those organizations that are dependent on performances and audiences and live events have suffered, very badly. And we must remember that there are a lot of freelancers, thousands of freelancers involved in film and theatre, as well as the institutions themselves. But there have been some successes, and I gave a lecture to an organisation in Estonia, and I featured some museums from around the world and some theatres that had actually adapted their business models quite successfully. And I know that the Royal Shakespeare Company has, been innovating very impressively with, new technology and attracting online audiences and interactive audiences indeed. So I think there's a mixed picture, but I think there are some successes, although it's been very difficult, especially for cultural organizations dependent on performance and, live events. I think it's been a particular challenge, and yes, some successes, but not that many, to be honest.
Oh my God, yeah, indeed. Let's hope the pandemic is over anytime soon and we are back to our normal lives. So thank you so much all for being here with us today. I think that our time is over. So I would like to thank you for being here with us today, and then let's hope that we get to meet you next year in Athens for the next Delphi Economic Forum. So thank you, and now over to the next session. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.